Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Jane Barlow Christensen. Did I get the name correct? I didn't ask you if I pronounced it correct.
Yeah, it's a long name, but it's easy to pronounce, hopefully. Yes, you did it perfectly.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say, before we dive into like the podcast and questions, I just want to say how grateful I am for this book that you sent me, because I've been using it. And I find I have so many herbal Bibles and all this other stuff, but the way this is done, and by the way, thank you for writing your beautiful inscription there. The way this book is created with the glossary and the way that allows you to go from a condition to, the herb, it just easy, intuitive. However, do you feel that with this AI and all this other, and Dr. Google, are people going to still need a book like this, or can they just go to, Chat GPT and ask it to hallucinate and give you wrong advice like it does all the time?
That's a really good question, because I think that it's going to become even more important to have knowledge that is in books, in hard copies. In fact, one of the most valuable resources that me and my siblings figure we have is my dad's library. My dad's library of all of his herbal books and all of his botany books. And to me, I believe that there is still good information on Google and ChatGPT and even Grok and all those things. I believe that really where you can trust information is from a trusted source in a book, in something that is, knowledge that's passed down. And herbal wisdom doesn't change. Like the properties of cayenne pepper, they're not different than they were 40 years ago. So, I'm glad you liked the book. It was awesome to send it to you, to someone who appreciates it like that. So yeah.
No, thank you. And I think the book is a continuation. It's a beautiful continuation. The original, your father's book was 1979, right? I think something like that. But what emotions came up for you when you first decided to revisit his work and continue and add to it?
Honestly, when I first was considering it, my first emotion was I am not worthy to take my dad's original work and expand on it. And that was very, very fleeting. It was an emotion that was kind of like, my dad was this very well-known botanist. He was educated in the normal education way with his PhD and all of his college learning. And me, I grew up with my dad like this, like all my other siblings. And my learning comes from experience and my own self-learning. So I had a fleeting emotion of I'm not really worthy to do this because I wasn't college educated. And it was very, very, very fleeting, because then I was like, now, wait a minute. I think I was about 60, because it's been when I first started working on it. And I was like, you have decades of experience, not just from when you were a little girl, but from when I was an adult raising my own kids and now my grandkids. It's like, then just gratitude dropped in that I was able to take my dad's legacy, expand on it, and help share this kind of stuff with the world. So it started off, I don't feel worthy, and it just flowed into gratitude.
It's interesting that you say that, because I went through a similar experience, I think, in my life working in genetics, human genetics. And one of the things, like sitting on a panel with people who had initials, before their name, after their name. And I didn't go to school for genetics. That wasn't really my thing. But the experience that you get with working with people in the industry, like, removes that whole imposter syndrome. And as you said, the gratitude that I had to tap into was, are you having a hard time hearing me? Are you not able to hear me?
Yeah, you're totally breaking up. I can't understand what you're saying. Sorry.
Interesting, because I actually have a full connection, all bars, so I don't know what's happening. Um, any
I
better
could get
now?
the gist of what you were saying, but I couldn't understand what you were asking. Sorry.
Is it better now? Is the connection better now? Still a delay?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems to kind of come in and out, but
Hmm.
can you hear me okay? Am I breaking up when I talk?
Sometimes, yeah, but I can make it
Okay.
out. So maybe, all right. Let me ask this question again and see how we do with this. Um,
Okay.
so what I was talking about was my own experience of having this, I don't know, imposter syndrome where I didn't have my initials and all that stuff. Still can't hear me?
Yeah, you're totally staticky. Sorry.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you are on your end, but your connection is okay. I have all my bars. Hmm. I'm gonna reboot my router really quick. One sec. And I'm gonna get out of this and get back in.
Frozen. I don't know if you can hear me at all.
Yeah, I can hear you now. I
Okay.
just rebooted my Wi-Fi. Um,
Okay.
give it a sec. Back up. Sorry about this. Usually
Okay.
don't
I
have
just want
any.
to make sure that if we record the whole thing, that it's actually going to be usable.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Uh, okay. Seems to be working fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I mean, yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, let's see. Let's see how it works out. So be your own shaman really doubles. You really took a lot of the work that was already done, basically doubled up on that. I wanted to ask you about the science versus intuition on your decision of what new plants to include. Uh, is there enough science, and do you have this kind of, you know, there is a little science, but I know because we've worked with this that it does this. Is there a certain balance you have to maintain?
Oh, I think there's absolutely a balance. In fact, what I think is interesting, and this is such a great question, is if you think about the way we're raised, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Thomas Campbell's work. He's a physicist, but he wrote a trilogy of books called My Big Toe, which is the theory of everything.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he talks about is how when we're born, we get nurtured, our intellect gets nurtured, but our intuition, which is really, really powerful and strong, especially when we're little kids, doesn't. So by the time we grow up, we've had, grade school, junior high, high school, college, PhDs, and all the stuff that we learn, the book learning, all of that. So our intellect gets nurtured. But what happens is our intuition, which is such a powerful tool, it doesn't. So when we go through our life and we hear something like, I said something about cayenne pepper, so let's stick with that. Cayenne pepper is a vasodilator. I personally, when I was 14, watched my dad stop a heart attack using cayenne pepper. So a normal person, a modern person going through this world would go, okay, well, wait a minute. That sounds kind of like, wow, that could be right. But then the intellect steps in and goes, no, no, I don't see the scientific proof in that. So that's one small example of us walking through this life with this intellect that's kind of a bully, because it's like if there's no science behind it, if there's no PhD, or like you were saying earlier, letters behind someone's name who's saying it, then our intellect just bullies the intuition out of us. That's my perspective. It's very strong.
I completely agree with you. Intuition
Yeah.
and also, the other industries that are maybe competing with, plant medicine may not be connected as well. Like
Yeah.
my company, we originally worked with the endocannabinoid system
Hmm.
and cannabis, and that's the biggest thing is like, oh, there's not enough research. Well, okay, but it's working. Like I can see it with hundreds of people. You can do any clinical trial in a petri dish in a test tube that you want, or you can get patient-reported outcome directly from the people who are using it, who are feeding back consistently. So, I mean, this whole notion of intellectual versus intuition. I mean, real world evidence is real world evidence. I don't care what the test tube says. So, there's a battle, right? You have a book, you know that this works. Do you have, or have you had, the scientific community say, oh no, cayenne pepper, you don't do that because it can do X, Y, and Z harm. We didn't do enough research, like all these different things. Is that something that you may have experienced?
I really don't experience it too much from like the mainstream scientific community, like the people in colleges and stuff. I do have um, people who are researchers and people who want to have scientific backup education. They'll go on and they'll start researching things on Google or wherever. Like a good example is suma root. And I did put suma in my book. It wasn't in my dad's book, but I love suma root. It's an adaptogenic herb, and an adaptogen is a plant that helps to balance body chemistry and even affects the hormones on a really beautiful level, including things like stress and anxiety. It can help you bring modern stress into balance. But suma is one of my favorite adaptogens. But if you do a deep dive or even just a small surface dive on Google, it'll tell you that you should stay away from it if there's any autoimmunity or if there's any type of cancers that have a hormone based, like if there's any hormone based cancers like breast cancer or cervical cancer or any estrogen based cancers. And it scares people when my deep knowledge of this plant, and my dad actually made a tincture out of it. So this is something that I've personally used for probably 40 years at this point with amazing results. But I have people that have researched and found things online that deters them away from it. And I don't personally, from my own experience, and not just now at this point, I have a lot of collaboration with a good group of doctors that are some of them are my customers. A lot of them are my friends because they're naturopaths. I have a good group of medical doctors now too that have kind of found me over the decades. And it's like, here's how I've used this in my practice. And it says this online. So yeah, I think this is where you have to do your due diligence. You do have to research, but then you have to follow your gut instinct. And this is where all that whole thing flows into this, is that there has to be an intuitive hit that you get that you trust.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more because
Yeah.
just to give an example of that, you brought up estrogen produced like HER2 positive breast cancer. So one of the things, there was a study back in 2006 that talked about, and I'll talk about what I know a little bit about, is that delta 9 THC, if you're consuming that, it elevates the risk of the hormone associated breast cancer. That study was overturned 3 other times in 2013, in 2018, and in 2021, let's say. But if you're Googling and you see a study that's done in 2006, maybe there wasn't any more studies done after that. Now you're focused on that was overturned years later. So it's this notion of,
Yeah.
science. Sometimes we're stuck with the tools that we have in 1995 versus what we have in 2025, and we can do more and better in different types of research. So I think I agree with your point. I didn't ask you, we sort of started going into this, but I want to talk a little bit about your own journey, your origin story. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Utah when my parents met in college in Utah. But then when I was just a baby, we moved to Idaho. And so just right up across right, Idaho and Utah just stack upon each other. And I'm the second oldest of 14 kids, and three are adopted. So my mom had 11, and it was just this big, beautiful, crazy, amazing family where we all took care of each other. We fought with each other. We loved each other. But Idaho is where I grew up.
So, I mean, 14 kids, the dynamic is it's just so interesting and fascinating to me. I'm an only child, so that's why, I always
Wow.
wonder. I always wonder to relate to people that have siblings, and 14 is interesting. As a kid, were you into plants? Did your dad get you involved? Or were you into sports, like, or were you in academics? Like, what were your interests?
So I grew up really interested in fitness, everything fitness. Like I ran track in high school. I played volleyball. I'm tall. I'm 5'10". I always loved sports, and my parents were, especially my dad, would always take us out up in the mountains, hiking and camping, and um, all the stuff. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so that was kind of what we did too. We were always outside, and we grew up in a rural area, so we could all go out and we'd spend all day outside. So I really had this massive love of physical fitness. So when I was 18, I started teaching group exercise classes, and I ended up being a personal trainer. I ended up building my own gym, my own health club with one of my sisters. And right around that time, my dad passed away, and he was only 62, and I'm 64 now. So his business kind of died with him. But while I was doing all this career in fitness, I was raising my kids, and the whole time using herbs and herbal medicine, because that's how we grew up. So it wasn't like, run to the doctor or run to the pharmacy or over the counter to get things for coughs and flu and fevers. And, the only time we ever went to the hospital, and even for my kids, is when there was an emergency, like a broken bone or something. So so my first career was fitness. In fact, I kept teaching exercise classes until COVID hit. And then the gym I was teaching went out of business. And I taught for 40 years, even while I was running my dad's herbal company. So
What
yeah.
was there a specific moment in your life that plant medicine showed its power to you in a way that you said, you know what, whether it's healing or whether it's like an awakening experience, where you said, you know what, this is the path that I need to pursue?
Yeah, so my dad passed away, and I was 38, I think. And my kids I was 38, and my kids had just both graduated from high school. So I've had them very young. I was 20 and 21. So, and I was at that point, I was working for a big fitness chain. I was managing a fitness club here in Salt Lake City. And it was a big corporate gig, and I had these goals, and it was hardcore sales, and I ran a sales team at this club, and I made a lot of money, but I was bitterly unhappy. I loved fitness, but I hated the corporate environment. And at that point, my gym was, the gym that I built with my sister we didn't survive. I think that's pretty common. So I was in corporate America. My kids had just graduated. Um, One of my sisters kind of said, "Hey, let's restart Dad's company," because he'd been gone for 4 years at that point. And I just said to my husband, "Look, I I want to be happy. I don't care how much money I make, because my kids were grown, and I just wanted to be happy. And I really didn't know how I was going to do it. And I thought, okay, well, my sister's going to do it with me. And so I quit my very lucrative health club job and restarted my dad's company. And then 6 months later, my sister bailed out, and she's like, "Yeah, this is too hard." And so I now have been going for more than 23 years by myself. I never dreamed it would be me. but I love it. It is absolutely what I was supposed to be doing. So
That's amazing. I love that story.
yeah.
You know, it's y- getting somebody to give up their comfort for happiness is a big step. You know, we're always creatures of comfort. Like, I have a
Yeah.
paycheck coming in, this and that, but now I have to do my own thing, and nothing is harder than doing your own thing. But it's a fulfilling journey. Hopefully, wanted to ask you
Oh my
about
gosh, yes.
wellness overload. I mean, there is so much. First of all, I have so many people that are contacting me that are coaches. I have so many people that are contacting me that they're shamans, that they're healers. They have, they have experience, they have herb, they have this, they have that. There's a tremendous amount of wellness overload noise, I think. How can somebody cut through that noise and understand what's really meaningful, proven versus, everybody else's Topanga Canyon in California shaman kind of thing?
Well, I think that first of all, people need to realize that wellness and health is our birthright. As human beings, this is how we're designed. You think about all the things that we take into our bodies and the stuff we're exposed to, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. You really think about all these things that our biological, this avatar takes in and is exposed to, and we still live. So then I think people just need to realize that health is not complicated. I'm not saying it's not easy, because there is a lot of noise, and I think in a way this is such a good thought process, because I believe the noise is extra loud right now because there's so many things that have been exposed about the systems that have been kind of keeping us sick and diseased and trapped. And, I think we've been in this matrix of lies from all these interests that don't want us to be highly conscious, highly healthy. And we're starting to break out of that. So if you think about everyone who's been trying to get their voice heard, and the people who are like, oh, this is now a big thing and it's a trend. So even the ones maybe who their goal is not as, as pristine as someone else's, I think you just have to tune into that intuitive piece of yourself. And you have to at some point say, okay, I'm making this too complicated. Because if start with the basics, eat good, healthy food, cook it at home yourself. Drink pure water. Stop drinking alcohol. I don't know how alcohol, people need to realize it's a poison, it's toxin. And there's no judgment if you drink alcohol. But if you want to be healthy, start with the basics. Get good sleep. Stand on the ground once a day and ground yourself. Get some sunshine on your skin. Those are things everyone can do. And if you feel overwhelmed by all the noise, disconnect from everything. Stop watching stuff. Stop absorbing everything and start putting into action the stuff that actually is going to change your life.
Yeah, great advice, and not complicated, and then you can start adding other things in that process. I wanted to ask you. I don't love this question. I'm going to ask it anyway because people ask me that kind of silver bullet kind of question. But I was just curious myself if there is a plant that you think is either overlooked or misunderstood. If there's something that kind of stands out to you, maybe you can tell us about that and what we should know about that plant.
Well, this is going to sound, it's kind of, this is interestingly has a ginormous amount of buzz right now. And I included it in my book, in the extra chapter on psychedelics and sacred plants, and that is tobacco, and that is nicotine. I think this has been a demonized substance. This is one of the things that, we have nicotine receptors in our body. There's nicotine in tomatoes and potatoes and eggplants. And so and even though that's a lot less in those vegetables than there is in a tobacco plant, I think tobacco has been unnecessarily demonized. This is something that my dad didn't spend a lot of time studying, but because of my Native American siblings, they are full-blooded Eastern Shoshone. And I have two sisters and a brother who are Native American. And my brother, who's now 62, he was 2 years old when we adopted, and I was 4. So these are siblings that are our siblings, but he has really dived back into his Native American roots. And there is a reason that tobacco is a sacred plant. And I believe that there's a reason it's been demonized, because nicotine, from my research and my knowledge over not just it, I'm actually so happy that it's starting to gain some momentum in the world right now, because it's been demonized unnecessarily. So yeah, that would be the one.
Yeah, I think that, just to clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, tobacco and nicotine and is a hape, they blow that tobacco up your nose, kind of, which is really intense that I did, but it's not the same as cigarettes. Like from the big tobacco companies. So we're talking about two different things. And I'm so glad you brought up the whole receptor thing, because I've always told people about evolution. I said, listen, we've evolved for millions of years, and there's things in us that we don't need, maybe our appendix and all that stuff. But we have endocannabinoid system receptors, we have nicotine receptors, we have opiate receptors, we have these receptors. So if we didn't need exogenous plants to be able to subsidize what we're endogenously not producing, those receptors wouldn't exist. So I'm really glad you brought that up. It makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually really love that it seems to be a resurgence since about 2020, and then it's gaining momentum. And it seems like, I think people need to pay attention to the delivery system. This is why, cigarettes and different tobacco products that have all of the chemicals that are added. This is where the addiction is. This is where the poisons are. So, I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of pure nicotine with a really good delivery system. So,
delivery system would be like a troche or a sublingual, something like that, or is it non-inhalant kind of system?
Yeah. So I mean, I know how to make a nicotine tincture out of a really high nicotine content species of tobacco. I don't make anything. I don't sell it, but I make it for my family. So. And it's the perfect clean delivery system. And you just take it sublingual, and you just take a few drops, and it's amazing. Yeah.
What should everybody have as sort of their standard go-to in their medicine cabinet for, conditions that we have on an ongoing basis? So some of them are preventative, like I take my supplements on a daily basis, and then let me go to my, how a lot of people have like acetaminophen or something like that sits in which I personally don't. But what should be the herbal sort of medicine cabinet everybody should have?
Yeah, so my number one thing is cayenne pepper. I love cayenne pepper. It's a simple, humble herb. And we talked about it a little bit in the beginning. It's powerful heart health. It's amazing for your vascular system. So when I was 14 in Idaho, you can get your daytime driver's license when you're 14, because it's rural. And there's a lot of people that were farmers, and they needed their kids to be able to drive the tractors and the farm equipment. So at 14, even if you didn't have you weren't on a farm, which we weren't, you got to get your daytime driver's license. So my dad took me out on my 14th birthday, and this was rural Idaho. And as we're having a driving lesson, we pull over to get gas. Now, this was prior to being able to put your credit card in, and just leave without going inside. So we filled up with gas, we went inside to pay, and there was an older man and his wife standing there in front of us to pay. And as we stepped up, the man clutched his heart and dropped to the ground. And my dad always kept two things on him. He kept a wad of cash in his pocket, and he kept a 1 ounce bottle of cayenne pepper tincture in his pants pocket. And within seconds, my dad had 2 droppers of cayenne pepper down this man's throat. And I'm like witnessing this, but my dad did crazy stuff like this on a regular basis. There was always things happening at our house. So with it, the ambulance was called, the gas attendant called the ambulance. And while, the man sat up, he got sputtering and coughing and got taken away in the ambulance, but he was fine. And he never had any heart problems. As far as I watched a heart attack be prevented. So that to me, and that sounds kind of crazy maybe for some people, unless you're into herbs and you're into things like that, you'll know how powerful that is. Because I've heard this multiple times from people since. So cayenne pepper is something to have in a liquid form or in a really fresh powdered form that you can stir a teaspoon or a tablespoon into a glass of water and then drink it because you want it to go into the system fast. So cayenne pepper, I think everybody should have. I love something for headaches and migraines and fevers. And my favorite plant for that right now is Feverfew, which is easy to grow. You can make your own. It's also easy to get. It's easy to get in capsule form, tincture form. So Feverfew should absolutely be in there. I love turmeric because turmeric is great for inflammation and pain. It's got a lot of, antioxidant properties, anti-cancer properties, but I've seen it go after inflammation and pain quite quickly. So if someone has some arthritis or, even menstrual pain for women, and then CBD, I think everyone should have CBD, in some form. I think everyone should have a good adaptogen. Holy basil is I love suma. We talked about that. But holy basil is probably one of my favorite adaptogens. It's in the mint family, and it's really delicious to drink as a tea. And it helps just to keep, modern stress at bay. And I think drinking tea on a daily basis of different teas is really good. And then maybe one more like probably dandelion root, because it's so protective for your liver. And I think our liver works really, really hard, and we don't really pay much attention to it. But yeah, you should see my in-home herbal apothecary. It's actually very cool. So I can just open the cupboard and be like, okay, what do I need? Oh, okay, I think my lymph system needs a little, and I'm very intuitive at this point. Like, what do I feel like I need? So I'll reach for whatever I have. So it's pretty fun.
So when you're if somebody wants to make their own tincture or just, have these in their medicine cabinet, like one of the things is we can go to our grocery store and we can get herbs like they're already made and we can add those, or do we buy the actual plant or grow the plant or actually engage and buy already pre-made things from you? But if somebody wants to do that on their own, should they avoid these like cayenne pepper, since you brought it up? If I go into my grocery store and buy I'm not going to mention a brand name, but it's already cayenne pepper powder, do I use that, or do I grow a cayenne pepper in my garden and dry it and use that? Does that give you the same effect or not?
No, you can do whatever feels right for you. So I don't think most people want to grow all their own stuff, or even grow, you might want to grow one thing. Like, a lot of people will pick up a basil plant in their grocery store and put it in their kitchen window, or put on their kitchen sink and have fresh basil. There's a lot of really beautiful properties to basil. But as far as the key with something like cayenne pepper or anything that you want to make into a remedy for yourself is to remember that if you were to go pick up a bottle of cayenne pepper spice, all ground up and ready to go, the freshness is where the power is. So you want to get something that hasn't been sitting on the shelf, not just in the grocery store for a while, but also in a warehouse before it got to the grocery store. Because over time, weeks and months, and then even years, it'll still flavor your food, but the medicinal properties degrade because of the oxidation. So I would say try to find your spices, especially something like cayenne. If you're going to take it powdered and keep a fresh bottle if that's what you want to use. But I would also suggest to people who are interested, learn how to make your own tinctures. Tinctures are actually very easy. In fact, I have a little video on my YouTube channel, how to make an herbal tincture. And, there's a ratio of alcohol to plant material. And sometimes if you want a certain strength, and I describe all this, it's a short little video, it's just up on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you should definitely do it. I would say from my experience, most people are not really interested in making these themselves. And that's fine too. But my biggest key for people is to get something fresh. And then if you're going to make a tincture, then your shelf life is indefinite. So especially if it's alcohol based, once you start adding water or glycerin or adding different things besides alcohol, then your shelf life is a little bit less. But with an alcohol based tincture, it's indefinite because it acts as a preservative as well as an extraction solvent. So
yeah, it makes total sense. But if you have a lipid soluble sort of herb, you mentioned CBD, so you would then combine that with something that's oil based, right? And then it's not homogenized and separates and doesn't have the same shelf life. I mean, it'd be great if you can put everything in alcohol because it extracts, but it's not going to get absorbed into your bloodstream like that.
Right, because there's some herbs that need, like I find a lot of root herbals need the alcohol because they're so strong in tannins and alkaloids that need. But yeah, it depends on what you're trying to extract for sure.
Do you think, and I don't know if you have your family, but as taken this on, but do you feel like there's a legacy that you can leave behind, like your father's legacy, yours, and then to carry sort of the torch going forward? Is there, do you have family that's interested in doing this and sort of growing this and expanding this? Because it's so important for people to know. I want to reemphasize what you said in the beginning, because healthcare is not that difficult. We're in the sick care sort of quagmire of the way the industry is set up with insurance and all that stuff. But you said it. I mean, it's the food that you put in your body. You have genetic predispositions. Know about those, mitigate those risks with lifestyle choices and changes. And that's it. And yeah, there's going to be, broken bones and all these other things that are going to happen that are beyond that. But having a go-to that has been done for generations and has a legacy behind, do you see this as something that you can have somebody carry the torch for you?
Yeah, I mean, my two sons are, one works full time with me and the other they've kind of dipped back in and out at different times. They're both in their 40s now. And I think that eventually they'll both be with me again, just because they're, adults trying to find their way. But then I have a almost 14-year-old granddaughter and a 12-year-old grandson. And my granddaughter has shown some interest, and I don't push it on either one of them, but this is all they use from when they were babies. So, we do a really powerful tincture of lomatium, which is a Native American plant that's very powerful antimicrobial, and it doesn't taste very good, but it's very powerful, and I would not want to go through life without it. But my grandkids reach for it, and they have a herbal cupboard at their house. So this is now part of just there. So this would be a fourth generation. So my dad, me, my son, and now my grandkids. So I'm hopeful that my grandkids are interested. you know, my son, like I said, I have one son that's with me full time, and it's his kids. He's got the two kids. So we'll see. You know, I love that it's a generational thing. I think that there's something really special about what we get to do, because we realize that, first of all, there's a legacy from my dad, and then we get to actually empower people to say, oh, I actually can take responsibility for my health on this level. Because I think people just need to be brave when they first start learning and trusting herbal medicine, because it's so out there, because the last 150 years, it's been like pharmaceuticals and surgeries and all these invasive things. And people haven't learned to trust it on the level, but it's a really good time to be here and to start looking at those things from my perspective.
Yeah, I think reminding people that a lot of the pharmaceuticals came from plants and they just synthesized them
Oh yeah.
to replicate that. It shouldn't be that scary. I'm sure if we go into the Amazon, I'm sure there's like 1,000 plants that have so many healing properties that we never even looked at that can address a lot of diseases that we're experiencing today. And until big pharma synthesize it, I always use these examples. I think it's interesting how pharma looked at delta 9 THC, and during the AIDS epidemic and all that stuff, they're like, okay, well, people are bringing brownies with cannabis to these AIDS patients that are in the hospital. What can we do to capitalize on this? All right, let us synthesize delta 9 THC, put it in a very high dose, and make it a pill you can take, like Marinol or whatever. It didn't work. And, it made people drowsy and sleep, but it didn't work. It didn't have the healing benefits because of in genetics, it's a polygenic. So it's not just one substance. It's the combination of these substances, many different things that have that healing power. So, having big pharma replicate these things is not going to do the same thing as the herb that it was intended to. So I agree with you that people have concerns and we're so used to, taking a pill, but maybe taking a step back and saying, why this pill? Just ask a question. I think over the last, several years with what the healthcare or sick care industry was feeding us, at the very least, we're now able to question it because there was mistakes that were made. So I really encourage people to at least ask why. Take two of these. Well, why two of these kind of things?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to
Yeah, I think more people are starting to. I feel very hopeful about all of this, Len.
Yeah.
I think that people are really starting to question, on a higher percentage than they ever have been.
I agree with you, but I also think it's geographical. So,
For sure.
I live in LA. I'm from Philly. Like, you go to the coast, you go to some other places, there's an openness to do that. Even though there's a lot of people who point to people in LA and they're like, "Whoa, you're woo, you're," maybe there's a little bit of that going on too. But at least there's an opening of the mind. I traveled. I was in Texas not that long ago. I would say, Austin maybe, yeah, but there's different places that they're not as open. I think so. Maybe just having a more global conversation would be helpful. I wanted to ask you a question about business versus sort of, like healing plants, but then you have to commercialize this, and then you're competing with the vitamin stores and these and those. What were some of the challenges that you faced in, taking this and commercializing this and getting people to understand and know that this is different and this is not what you would get at your, grocery store, your vitamin store?
I've always been a person who really never put a lot of attention on competition. You know what I mean? It's like when I restarted my dad's company, with my sister kind of felt the same way too. Like, this is going to be hard because there's a million supplement companies out there.
Right.
And I just kind of thought, you know what, this is, the people who are supposed to find me will find me. And I've always thought, well, if I can educate people, and you got to remember what I said earlier. I went into this because I wanted to be happy, not because I wanted to make $1 million. At this point, I've been approached. The last 4 or 5 years, I've had 1 or 2 times a month still, people reaching out to me, different companies wanting to buy my brand, because I have my line of my dad's brand, Barlow Herbal, and then I have my own brand. I've got my own line of supplements I call Jane Health, all things that over the years, as I've needed something for myself, then I've brought it out into a product, because people are like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm taking this. Well, can I get that from you? Well, no. So as the years have gone by, that's kind of how that morphed. And I think that if I educate people, if I show an example, like for me, if I'm 64 and I take care of myself, I'm not on any drugs, I practice what I preach, and people are kind of like, well, I want that. So my goal really at this point is, I first of all believe the people who want to find me, who need what I have, because we have some hardcore protocols that go after hardcore issues, really, really good things. And so it makes it really hard to advertise or to really tell people what I do and teach people what I do. It makes it very, very difficult, because I can't make claims, so it's an interesting place that we find ourselves in. And I just find, if I can share what I do, if I practice what I preach, and I think the people that are supposed to find me will. I really don't care about being a Fortune 500 company. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't, that doesn't, I believe there's no competition, because there's only one me and there's only one Barlow Herbal. What I do, I'm very unique, and the products I bring out are pristine. They're double tested and with lab testing, and they're very, very clean. So when people find me, they're kind of like, holy cow. And then they share with their friends and their family. And yeah, I've never really done any marketing.
Well, I mean, that's great, and that's definitely a unique perspective, because there's a lot of people that think they compete in a space, and I always like, you're competing with yourself. Just be the best version of
Right.
yourself, be better tomorrow
Right.
than you are today, kind of thing. And that was
Right.
always my mindset too. And but shareholders don't believe in that. So
Yeah,
keep
I
it
don't have any
in mind.
shareholders. I'm my only shareholder. I'm the shareholder.
That's the way to be. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on psychedelics as therapeutics?
I think they are amazing. I think they're completely misunderstood. I think that I'm watching the medical community start to hijack it a little bit, because there's so much interest in it right now. It's kind of coming around from before Nixon had the war on drugs and they banned all the things. I've watched a big underground movement, and now it's almost kind of how childbirth was hijacked by the medical industry too. And I only say that because it's like, there's a lot of business for babies to be born in a hospital, hooked up to all the monitors. It's a very unnatural setting, and it's not the healthiest place for a mom and a baby, for a mom to bring a baby in. And I'm not saying those situations where the hospital can't save the life of a mom and a baby. There are absolutely, that is not taking that into account. But I think that the same thing is starting to happen in the psychedelic area, because if someone needs or is interested in a psychedelic journey for higher consciousness or PTSD or OCD behaviors or trauma healing, then it needs to be carefully facilitated. It needs to be with the right intention. And I don't have any problem with people doing it for entertainment. That personally is not my jam. I don't judge what people choose to do at all. But I've had 4 carefully facilitated plant medicine journeys, a year and a half apart, and they have been absolutely life-changing for me. So I think those plants are gifts. Every plant that's put on this planet are gifts from Mother Nature. And I believe that we are part of Mother Nature. We're connected. So if you look, this is one thing, my Native American brother, he has dived back deep into the whole peyote mescaline area because that's part of his culture. And I've never participated with that with him because I feel like that's a sacred part of his heritage. So I just think it's if you just it can be absolutely, it can change your life. It can heal you from trauma. It can heal you from, from the denseness of this world, and it can show you a path to your higher self, which is how psychedelics and plant medicine on that level have always been used. I'm a huge fan of it being done correctly.
Yeah, with reintegration too. You
Yes.
mentioned is peyote. What was the other thing? Mescaline, right? So yeah, that was many years ago. I had a very intense mescaline experience that was just, and I wish I would have had somebody, because I did it, just without thinking that it's plant medicine. But it was, I wish I had somebody to help me reintegrate afterwards, that I could actually figure out what occurred. So it's very important what you're saying is there's plant medicine, and there's the process of taking that information, bringing it back, working with a facilitator or a group that actually can, help guide you from what you've been downloaded with. So definitely.
Yeah, I mean, because I've seen people go through a plant medicine journey and they might have gone in with the right intention, but if it's not facilitated correctly, someone will want to come out of that and realize that they've been doing everything in their life wrong. And they will want to blow up their marriage and blow up their job. And it's like, no. If you need to integrate, and there is a beautiful power to shamans and a facilitator who can help you integrate. Yes, 1,000%. I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay. I have some questions that I ask my guests that are music related questions. So hopefully it'll be fun and interesting. Let's see. All right.
Okay.
If you recall, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Oh, I totally recall. I think I was 14 and I went and saw the Carpenters
Okay.
with my parents. And then my second one was the Village People.
Oh, wow. Both
It was
fun.
awesome. I was 18 years old. It was awesome. But that was a long time ago. But yes, that was such fun music.
What was the last concert you attended?
The last concert I attended was Elton John on his what was it? The final tour, which actually turned out to not be his final tour. He came here to Salt Lake, and yeah, Elton John.
All right. So for the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums. You don't have to remember the name of the actual album, like Rolling Stones, or it can be whatever. So what will be those 5 albums?
I kind of have to go back to some of the music I loved from the 80s. Billy Idol, 1,000%. Rebel Yell, man, I could turn that on and just love it. Tina Turner, totally. There is a really amazing French musician that I discovered probably 7 or 8 years ago. His name is Christophe Wilhelm, and his music I do this type of painting, and I'll put his music on, and it just like totally just gets me in the flow when I'm painting. I also really love Fleetwood Mac from the old days, and then also an artist named Leo Sayer back from the old days. So,
All right. final question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Well, I never had my own room growing up because there was too many of us. But I was always known as the neat one when I was growing up with all my siblings. So everyone wanted to share a room with me when we'd switch rooms around, or we moved a few times when I was a child. So all my siblings in the older group of kids when we were all growing up together wanted to share a room with me. But at one point, I shared with a sister. We each had a single bed on one side of the room, and we literally put a rope down the middle of the room because her side was so messy and my side was so clean. I'm like, you are not allowed to step over this line. And then it turned out she ended up giving me some of her allowance to keep her side of the room clean. So I've been a neat freak my whole life. So always a clean room.
Was there anything on the walls, anything distinctive like art or a poster?
Not really.
Nothing.
No, I think when you grow up in a family that big, there's not that would have probably been a little bit of a luxury to have different posters, and it wasn't something we ever felt deprived about. If there was any art, it was typically homemade stuff. Because I'm second to the oldest, I had little siblings who would draw me pictures, and there might have been some of that on the walls, but no, not. The walls were actually pretty bare. There was no deprivation. That's just how it was.
Jane, where can people find out more about you, about Barlow, about your business? Where can they engage with any of your content or products?
So it's you'll find me at barlowherbal.com, and it's BarlowHerbal. And then my YouTube channel is Barlow Herbal. Social media is also Barlow Herbal. So I'm easy to find. And the goal is really just to kind of engage people I believe we're on an ascension path. I think humanity is ascending into higher consciousness. And that is kind of my whole thing. Let's help people get healthy, and let's help people raise their consciousness. So I'm super easy to find.
Yeah, I agree. And we're aligned in our missions. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and whatever, my audience can do to amplify this message, please do so. And I want to thank my audience for listening, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And thank you for the wonderful reviews, and thank you for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon. Don't forget to engage with not just Jane's content, but the herbs. Like, there's nothing like having a herbal medicine cabinet. People come to me all the time too, and with cannabis, and can you do this, and can I do that, can I take this? So, and I learn a lot. And this book is so wonderful for you to be able to really learn and see what your coverage should have, and so really take advantage of that, because I agree with what you're saying, Jane. We're in a transitionary state that we need to be empowered and take better control over our own health and wellness. It's enough of this reactionary healthcare. Oh, something hurts, I'm going to go get a shot for it. It's time to start preventing and start working on, health and wellness, and not just sick care. So thank you so much for being on. I really, really appreciate it. Apologize about some of the technical challenges. We were able to overcome them, and thank you so much for what you do. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Len. It was an absolute pleasure. You find your like-minded soul tribe, and I'm glad we're connected.
Likewise. Thank you. Hey, everyone. So, does anybody know what greening out means? I've been the recipient of so many calls over the years of people greening out. That means they took too much THC and had an adverse reaction. So I always recommend other things, but nothing really concrete. Now I can. There's a solution. It is called Antidose. Antidose.com is quick. It's rapid. It works immediately, safe, and effective. So
I love my props. If you are toasty or you are burnt, that's the difference. Now, I also love the 1 gummy, 2 gummy, 3 gummy floor. So just be aware, very narrow therapeutic window. You know exactly what you can take now if you've taken too much. Once again, it's Antidose at antidose.com. Get yours today. Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.